6 young athletes, 6 broken dreams, and 6 moments where one bad landing, one wrong gust of wind, or one push too far ended a career, a body, or a life. Some of them were warmed up and ready. Some of them never even saw it coming. One of them was a gold medal Olympic champion who survived the sport, only to die from something nobody saw coming. So, why does a sport built on perfect 10 scores keep paying for those 10s with the bodies of children? It was October 18th, 1989, inside a packed arena in Stuttgart, Germany. The World Gymnastics Championships were on. 18-year-old Adriana Duffy stood at the end of the runway, ready to vault. She was the only gymnast on the Puerto Rican team, a one-woman show carrying her tiny island's flag against the giants of the sport. She had trained for years to get here. She had worked harder than girls with full national teams behind her. And she was about to take a vault that would end her gymnastics career and change her body forever. Adriana had been born in Puerto Rico and trained in the United States. She was a strong, smart, technical gymnast. She had earned her spot at the World Championships through pure determination. The vault she was running was a tough one, the kind that needed perfect timing, perfect height, and perfect hand placement on the vaulting horse. Back in 1989, vault was still done on the old, narrow vaulting horse, a thin piece of equipment that gave gymnasts almost no room for error. The safer vaulting table that exists today was still 12 years away from being introduced. If a gymnast missed her hand placement, the equipment did not forgive. Adriana hit the runway and ran. She pushed off the springboard. She launched herself toward the vaulting horse. And in the air, she realized something was wrong. She was too far back. Her body was lined up wrong. Her hand reached for the vaulting horse and slipped off. She had no height. She could not finish the flip. In a split second, she had to decide whether to bail out of the move or push through it. Bailing out at that height could put her in even more danger. So she tried to finish. She came down out of the air at high speed, and she landed on her neck. The arena went silent. Adriana lay on the mat. She could not move her legs. She could not feel most of her body. The doctors took her to the hospital. The diagnosis came back: a broken neck and severe spinal cord damage. She was paralyzed from the chest down. She was 18 years old. She would never walk again. Adriana Duffy never made it to the Olympics. The 1992 Barcelona Games came and went without her. She rebuilt her life. She married, took her husband's name, and became Adriana Duffy Hurling. Years later, when reporters asked her about that day in Stuttgart, she described the most terrifying part of vault: getting lost in the air. Because if you don't know where you are and you don't know where the floor is, she said, really bad things could follow from that. Her fall was officially called a freak accident. But the truth was that the equipment she was vaulting on, that thin, hard vaulting horse, had been hurting and killing gymnasts for years. The change to a safer vault would not come until 2001. By then, dozens more girls had already paid the price. Before this gets even more shocking, hit subscribe, because the next gymnast you'll hear about was a perfect 10 Olympic champion who survived everything the sport could throw at her, only to die from something no one ever expected. September 25th, 1988, Seoul, South Korea, the Olympic all-around final. 19-year-old Yelena Shushunova from the Soviet Union stepped up to the vault. The whole gold medal, the one that would define her life, came down to this last apparatus. Romanian gymnast Daniela Silvas was just ahead of her by a tiny score. Yelena needed a perfect 10, not a 995, not a 975, a 10. Anything less, and the gold went to Romania. The crowd held its breath. Yelena ran. She vaulted. She landed. The judges flashed the score, 10.0. She had won by 25 thousandths of a point, one of the closest finishes in Olympic gymnastics history. Yelena Lvovna Shushunova was born May 23, 1969 in Leningrad, the Russian city now called St. Petersburg. She started gymnastics at age 6. By 1985, she had won the all-around at the World Championships. She invented 2 skills so important they were named after her: the Shushunova on uneven bars and the Shushunova on floor exercise. Her tumbling was explosive. Her landings were textbook. She could do almost anything in the gym, including a layout Thomas Salto on floor, the same dangerous skill that had paralyzed Elena Mukina years before. But unlike Mukina, Yelena had the strength and timing to land it. She survived everything the sport tried to do to her. The 1988 Seoul Olympics were the high point of her career. She won gold in the team event, she won gold in the all-around, she won silver on balance beam, she won bronze on uneven bars. She and Daniela Silvas each scored 7 perfect tens at those games, tying the record set by Nadia Comaneci in 1976. 2 months after Seoul, Yelena retired from competition. She was 19 years old with nothing left to win. She went home to St. Petersburg and lived a quiet life. She worked for the city sports committee. She helped organize the gymnastics events at the 1994 Goodwill Games and the 1998 European Championships, both held in her home city. She got married. She had a daughter. She was inducted into the International Gymnastics Hall of Fame in 2004 and the International Jewish Sports Hall of Fame in 2005. She had survived a brutal sport. She had won the highest prize. She had built a normal life on the other side of fame. Then, on August 16, 2018, Yelena Shushunova died. She was 49 years old. The cause of death was complications from pneumonia. She had gone into a St. Petersburg hospital with what seemed like a treatable illness. Within days, her body could not fight it. The Russian Gymnastics Federation announced she had died suddenly. Her old rival, Daniela Silvas, remembered her in interviews. A serious, quiet competitor who meant business in the gym. Yelena's death was not caused by gymnastics directly, but many of her old teammates wondered if a body that had been pushed so hard for so many years had been left weaker than it looked. The Olympic champion who had beaten everyone in Seoul could not beat a chest infection. She left behind a husband, a daughter, and a sport that had taken everything she had to give. January 27, 2014, Park City, Utah. A bright, cold afternoon on the slopes of Park City Mountain Resort. A 25-year-old Brazilian woman named Lais Souza was skiing with her Canadian coach, Ryan Snow, and her training partner, Yosi Santos. They were taking one last relaxed run before the long flight to the 2014 Sochi Winter Olympics. Lais was a week away from the biggest moment of her life. She was about to become the first Brazilian ever to compete in aerial skiing at the Winter Games. And in less than 5 minutes, she would hit a tree and never walk again. Lais Souza had been a star Brazilian gymnast for over a decade. She had competed at the 2004 Athens Olympics. She had competed at the 2008 Beijing Olympics. She had won 3 bronzes and a silver at the Pan American Games. By her own count, her body had been through 17 surgeries. In 2012, just before the London Olympics, she broke her hand in training and had to drop off the team. At 24, she was tired. Her gymnastics career was almost done. Then, in 2013, the Brazilian Olympic Committee asked her if she wanted to try aerial skiing, the high-flying winter sport where athletes ski down a ramp, launch into the air, and do flips before landing. Brazil had no winter sports tradition. They needed gymnasts who could fly. Only 4 women showed up to the tryouts. 2 were chosen. Lais was one of them. She moved to Park City to train. Within 6 months, she had qualified for the Sochi Olympics. She would be Brazil's first aerial skier at the Winter Games. She was exhausted, excited, and almost there. On January 27th, the team took a recreational ski day. Lais was not training tricks. She was just skiing down a regular trail with friends. She was wearing a helmet. Her coach was right beside her, and then, somewhere on a slope called Double Jack, she lost control at high speed. She went off the trail. Her head hit a tree. she was rushed to the University of Utah Medical Center in Salt Lake City. The neurosurgeon, Dr. Andrew Daly, found that she had dislocated a vertebra near the top of her spine. Her spinal cord was crushed. She could not move her arms or legs. She could not breathe on her own. They put her on a ventilator. They moved the breathing tube from her mouth to her neck so she could be more comfortable. She could not speak. She could only nod. The neurointensivist, Dr. Holly Ledyard, said Lais' lack of skiing experience had nothing to do with the accident. It could have been anybody, Dr. Ledyard said. She was just skiing, like people do. Another Brazilian skier was sent to Sochi to take her place. Lais Souza watched the opening ceremony from a hospital bed in Utah. She has been paralyzed from the neck down ever since. She lives in Brazil with her mother. She has become a motivational speaker. She has slowly regained a tiny bit of feeling in her shoulders and elbows. She has never walked again. March 25th, 2014. Berlin, Germany. Less than 2 months after Lais Souza hit that tree in Utah. Inside a German national training gym, a 16-year-old elite gymnast named Alisa Chirino was working on the uneven bars. She was one of Germany's most promising young gymnasts. She was on track to make the German team for the 2016 Rio Olympics. Her family was proud. Her coaches were proud. Her country was watching her rise, and in one bad swing on the bars, all of it ended. Alisa was a careful, technical gymnast. She had worked her way up through the German national system from the time she was a small child. She had qualified for the German national team. She had been competing in international youth meets. She was the kind of teenager whose whole life pointed toward the Olympics. Her routine on uneven bars was strong. Her release moves were clean. She was working hard for the Rio Olympics 2 years away when 2014 was supposed to be her breakout year on the senior international scene. That afternoon, Alisa was practicing her bar routine. She was doing the same swings, the same flips, the same releases she had done thousands of times before, and then something went wrong. The reports were brief. She lost her grip on a release skill. Her body spun out in the air. She came down on her neck. She fell to the mat below the bars. She could not move. She was rushed to Friedrichshain Hospital in Berlin. The doctors found a fracture of her cervical vertebrae, a broken neck. They operated on her that same evening. A few days later, she was moved to the emergency hospital in Berlin for longer-term care. The damage to her spinal cord was severe. At 16 years old, Alisa Chirino was paralyzed. The Olympic dream her whole family had been chasing was over. What happened next was a different kind of fight. German television documentary makers from the YSO film company started following her. They wanted to show what life was like for a teenage gymnast whose career had ended in a single second. The documentary, called Just One Wrong Move, aired on the German channel ZDF in 2016. Viewers across Germany watched Alisa learn how to live in a wheelchair. They watched her family take care of her. They watched her smile through pain that most adults could not imagine. Years later, in 2024, the same filmmakers came back. The new documentary, Alisa's New Life, showed what had happened in the 10 years since. Alisa had grown up. She had built a different life. Not the life of an Olympic gymnast, but a life that was hers. Her body never recovered. The bars where she had fallen were still being used by other German girls every day, all of them dreaming of the same Olympics that would never come for Alisa. November 8th, 2019, New Era Gymnastics, Hamden, Connecticut. A Friday afternoon, 20-year-old Melanie Coleman, a junior nursing student at Southern Connecticut State University, climbed up to the uneven bars for a routine practice. She had done these bars thousands of times. She had been a level 10 gymnast, the highest level in the USA Junior Olympics program. She was one of the best in Connecticut. Her two older sisters had been gymnasts. Her mother had been a gymnast. The sport was in her blood, and in less than 30 seconds, the sport would take her life. Melanie was born and raised in Milford, Connecticut. She came from what her mother Susan called the Coleman Seven, a tight family of 7 that did everything together. She had been an all-state gymnast at Jonathan Law High School. She had been her team captain. She had been named a Women's Collegiate Gymnastics Association Scholastic All-American. She loved kids. She taught gymnastics part-time at New Era, her old club gym, to little children ages 2 to 15. Her old coach, Tom Alberti, had trained her for 10 years. He called her a leader. He said she had a desire to help everyone around her. She was 20 years old, halfway through her nursing degree, engaged with her life. The accident happened during routine practice. Reports said she slipped off the high bar. She fell, she hit the mat. The fall, the kind of fall every gymnast takes 1,000 times in a career, broke her neck and crushed her spinal cord. She was rushed to Yale New Haven Hospital. The surgeons did everything they could. 2 days later, on Sunday, November 10th, 2019, Melanie Coleman died. The Connecticut Chief Medical Examiner ruled her death the result of complications from blunt injuries to her head and neck. She was 20. What made Melanie's death so different from the others was that no coach had pushed her onto a dangerous skill. No federation had ignored warnings. No judge had told her to lose weight. She was an experienced college gymnast doing a routine she knew. She slipped, she fell. The sport itself killed her. Her family donated her organs. Susan Coleman told reporters her daughter's spirit and humor would live on through the people who got the gift of life. The gymnastics community was stunned. About 100,000 gymnasts get hurt every year, according to the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. Most injuries are wrists, knees, ankles, but sometimes, rarely, the fall goes the wrong way. Sometimes the head hits first. Sometimes the neck snaps. Coaches had been told for decades that gymnasts were starting younger and doing harder skills. The bodies were under more stress. Melanie was a careful, experienced, brilliant young woman in a sport that had no margin for one bad landing. She gave her life to it. It was September 2025 in a gym in Penza, Russia. 19-year-old Naufal Takdir Al-Bari from Indonesia stood under the high bar. He was preparing for the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics. He was Indonesia's brightest hope, a rising star. The 2025 World Championships were just weeks away. They were going to be held in his own country, Indonesia. He had everything in front of him. And in one mistimed flight off the bar, his life ended. So, how did a foreign gymnast end up alone in a Russian hospital, dying for 2 weeks while his country waited for news? Naufal was born in 2006 in East Java, Indonesia. He had won big at the National Sports Week in Deli Serdang in 2024. He represented his region. He was Indonesia's brightest male gymnast. The Indonesian Gymnastics Federation had high hopes. To prepare him for the world stage, they had sent him to Russia, long the world center of men's gymnastics, to train with Russian coaches who knew how to push elite male gymnasts to the highest levels. He was learning the skills he would need for LA 2028. He was working on the high bar. The high bar is the most dramatic event in men's gymnastics. The gymnast spins around a steel bar nearly 9 feet off the ground, then lets go and flies through the air for a flip or a twist before landing on the mat. To practice these dangerous releases, gyms use foam pits, deep pits filled with foam blocks that catch the gymnast safely. Naufal was working on a release skill. He let go of the bar. Something went wrong in the air. He came down into the foam pit at the wrong angle. He hit something inside the pit, the bottom, the edge, a hard piece, and his neck broke. He was rushed to G.A. Zakarian Hospital in Penza. The doctors fought to save him. He was put on a ventilator. For 12 days, he hung between life and death. His family in Indonesia waited for news. Time zones apart from their boy, watching their phones for every update from Russia. On Thursday, September 25th, 2025, Naufal Takdir Al-Bari died. He was 19. He had never made it to an Olympics. He had been training to get there. the Russian investigation came out fast. Vasily Titov, the vice president of the Russian Gymnastics Federation, posted on Telegram that they had checked all the circumstances. He said the athlete was not prepared to perform such a complex element. Blame the gymnast, the boy who could not defend himself. The Indonesian Gymnastics Federation called it a deep blow. The chairperson, Ida Yuliati, said Indonesia had lost its best. 6 gymnasts, 3 continents, 3 decades, from the World Championship arena in Stuttgart to a college gym in Connecticut, from a Berlin training hall to a foam pit in Russia. The same story keeps happening. Equipment that was not safe enough, coaches who pushed too hard, bodies that were trained past what they could give, and in every case, somebody, somewhere, had been told the warning signs and looked the other way. The sport keeps moving forward. The gold medals keep getting handed out. And somewhere right now, a teenage girl is climbing onto a vault, hoping she will land on her feet